Hello, and welcome to the debut episode of Five Star Takes. I am your host, the five star producing machine, DDJ. On this show, I will give my takes on the topics that the boys discussed on the most recent episode of Shooting Shit. Speaking of which, don't forget that every Friday morning, unless otherwise noted, new episodes of Shooting Shit will be available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. This show right here is exclusive to the Facebook group for now, and if you know anyone who is a fan of the show, watches the show, but isn't on Facebook or isn't in part of this group, get them to join the group because otherwise they're missing out on the fun. Speaking of fun, let's get things started with one of my soon to be famous jokes. So I don't mean to brag, but I just put together a puzzle in one day. The box said 2 to 4 years. All right. So let's get on with the show. First thing the boys talked about on the most recent episode of Shooting Shit was the Elimination Chamber. And one of the takes right away that was made was that the hot one, Giovanni Tuhati, said that a star was made. That star, Tiffany Stratton. I agree to a certain extent. I think it's just because the crowd was Australian. They seem to always, when we do they do these foreign shows, these foreign markets, the crowds are always lively for just about anyone. But he was right. They seem to really be into Tiffany Stratton. In fact, I think Liv Morgan, who I'm going to talk about a little bit later, got booed after eliminating Tiffany Stratton from the Elimination Chamber. I do agree with the fact that Tiffany will be a star, and do not be surprised that if by this time next year for maybe WrestleMania 41, if she's in one of the main events fighting for either the Women's World Championship or the WWE Women's Championship. So great call, Jovan, on Tiffany Stratton. I also want to take a minute to say that Joey K's take on the Logan Paul about that he's as good as he is for, as relatively new to the business he is, spot on. We all hated Logan Paul on the show, but we can't deny how good of a talent he has become. I mean, I think he surprised just about everybody. I also wanted to talk about a few things that I took from the Elimination Chamber. My first was that the show overall was very predictable, but that didn't mean it was bad because I still thought it was a good show. The main take that I had from the event was that I think the women's elimination chamber, it came down to Becky versus Liv. After Liv had eliminated, I believe it was Bianca Belair, Becky hit her with the manhandle slam and won the match. And I felt like that. I think they should have given Becky and Liv maybe 5 to 10 more minutes before doing the finish, because a lot of people may not realize this because I think everybody wants Becky versus Rhea. A lot of people don't realize that Liv has probably a better story when it comes to Rhea than Becky does. Because a lot of you may not remember that Rhea Ripley is the one who injured Liv's shoulder and cost her, I want to say it was about like 6 months. It was an extended period of time of her career. And Liv had every reason to want to get back, and maybe she might find her way somehow into this match now that's set for WrestleMania with Becky versus Rhea. We'll see. Speaking of WrestleMania, a lot of the cards seem to take shape at that show. Based on certain events, obviously we know we're getting Drew versus Seth for the World Heavyweight Championship, and Drew McIntyre right now is probably doing his best work since right before COVID hit. I don't think anyone out there can really say otherwise. But I do also think that with some things that happened just recently on SmackDown, which aired after the boys finished recording, it looks like Rollins is going to be pulling double duty along with Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. We'll probably get into that with the boys on next week's episode of Shooting Shit. So I will save my take for that once we record there. Speaking of the WrestleMania card, it is taking shape. A lot of potential matches came about. I already mentioned Drew versus Seth was set. Becky versus Rhea is set. but it looked like the men's elimination chamber kind of gave us an idea of two more matches that we can expect at WrestleMania. One being LA Knight versus AJ Styles, and another one which I'm actually fairly excited about, that being Randy Orton versus Logan Paul. And I think it's a big move for the WWE. They must have a lot of faith in Logan Paul if they're putting him in at WrestleMania versus Randy Orton. And think about it, Logan Paul has had a lot of real high profile matches since he's become part of the WWE. I mean, he beat Rey Mysterio for the United States Championship. He had that viral moment at the Royal Rumble not this year, but last year's 2023 Royal Rumble against Ricochet. And then he had the match with Seth Rollins at WrestleMania last year. He's been in there in a tag match with The Miz against the Rey and Dom Mysterio. He's had a one-on-one match against The Miz at SummerSlam as well. So obviously the WWE has a lot of faith in him, and rightfully so, because again, like I talked about before, Logan Paul, we're not fans of him on the show, but there's no denying how good he really is. And I personally think that's going to be something that could potentially be a show stealer. There's also speculation that Gunther, based on the events of what happened on Monday Night Raw, is going to be in some kind of multi-man match. I mean, it may be one-on-one versus Sami Zayn, but I mean, there are a lot of other guys that threw their names in the hat. I mean, there was Dominic Mysterio, Damian Priest, Sami Zayn, I mentioned, Chad Gable wanting to get back into the picture. So I have a feeling we're going to see some sort of multi-man match with for the Intercontinental Championship. And obviously, originally, I think we all know that it was supposed to be Gunther versus Brock Lesnar, but we all know what happened there, and I'm not going to go into that because the details of that are really, really bad. I don't want to talk about that stuff. So going back to my take on Liv Morgan and Becky Lynch being the last two women in the chamber, I truly felt like that I should have gotten more than what we got with that, just based on the fact that, again, Liv has a story with Rhea. Like, Liv wants to get back at Rhea for costing her a few months due to a shoulder injury. And obviously, the money is in Becky versus Rhea, which is why they're going this way. But to me, Liv versus Rhea is actually a better story. So kind of moving on, we had got into talking about other things that were going on in the WWE. Silver Wolf brought up a really good point about Bianca Belair and Montez Ford really needing to go heel and being that Jay-Z and Beyonce power couple. I am wholeheartedly behind that. I've said that before myself. Silver Wolf made a great case. Go back and watch the show to listen to his take. And I hope that happens sooner rather than later, because we all know how good Bianca Belair is. And I think she's much better as a heel than she is as a babyface. Not saying she's a bad babyface, because she's not, but I feel like she's better suited as being a heel. Go see some of her work in NXT. And we've all said it on the show as well. The sky's the limit for Montez Ford. He can talk, he can wrestle, he's athletic, he's got the look, he's got the body. Just pull the trigger, WWE, on Montez Ford. Let him go full-blown heel, and let's see what he can do. So moving on, we lost a couple of personalities in the world of professional wrestling over the past week. We lost Virgil and one of the original Four Horsemen, Ole Anderson. Now, Ole Anderson is someone that I really haven't seen a lot of his work. It's pretty much just based on his stuff with the early days of the Four Horsemen, of which he was one of the original members. By all accounts, he wasn't a very nice person. He was very, I don't know if I want to say bitter or whatever, but he was very old school in the way he ran things, or comported himself as a professional wrestler. And there are a few people, like I believe Arn Anderson, who, idolized Ole, and is very basically kind of, if it wasn't for Ole, Arn's career may have not panned out the way that it did. Ric Flair's also been complimentary of what Ole did for his career, inviting him to be a cousin of the Andersons. And again, you're talking about the Four Horsemen, one of the most, if not the most legendary groups in all of professional wrestling history. Virgil, I've had a couple experiences meeting him. He's definitely a hustler. He's out there trying to get his money, but I mean, people want to get out there and make money, and I'm never gonna sit there and tell someone, badmouth someone for trying to get out there and make money. And I mean, times I met Virgil, he was a decent guy. He wasn't one of the best experiences I've had, but he wasn't a bad one either. But there's no denying that Virgil was an essential part of the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase's character. I don't think it would have worked out as well for Ted if he didn't have Virgil for when he did. And then the babyface turn by Virgil at after his match with Ted DiBiase versus Dusty and Dustin Rhodes at the 1991 Royal Rumble, to me, is one of the most underappreciated yet great moments in the history of WWF/WWE. I actually watched that that instance the other day, and that pop was something else. And I mean, listen to the commentary, especially with Roddy Piper, who was very essential in the Virgil babyface turn as well. Virgil would go on to have a couple matches with Ted DiBiase, one at WrestleMania, and then probably the pinnacle of his career at the 1991 SummerSlam when he defeated Ted DiBiase for the $1 Million Championship. He would lose the title to DiBiase, I believe, shortly before the 1991 Survivor Series, and never really seemed to be able to recover because, I mean, honestly, he wasn't that great of a wrestler. He would go on to be part of the NWO, I believe as chief of security, Vincent. Then he was part of the West Texas Rednecks and a few other gimmicks in WCW. He'd go on to do a lot of things with, I believe, GCW. I know Joey Janela spoke had a really nice tribute to Virgil. And obviously we all know love for his love for the breadsticks and meat sauce at Olive Garden, which anyone, you go to Olive Garden, you're definitely chowing down on the breadsticks. So I'm going to end the show by talking about Sting and the fact that he is getting ready to have his last match. His last match will be Sunday night at Revolution. And shortly after the boys stopped recording on Thursday night, it was announced that Sting's match is going to main event Revolution, which is something that I said from the beginning when we first initially brought up Sting retiring after Revolution this year. I said he's one of those guys that deserves to be the main event, regardless of the fact that there is a World Heavyweight Championship match. I feel like AEW's put the most into promoting this story, and I think they're going to do Sting justice. I feel like Sting is going to be one of those rare instances where he's going to go out on a high note. They're going to win the match. They're going to hold the tag titles up in the air. The confetti's going to go off, and we're going to get that storybook send-off that Sting really deserves because, let's face it, his time in the WWF was a waste. He had a great run in TNA, and obviously, let's not forget his legendary feuds with Ric Flair and Vader and, all the other, Hollywood Hogan and WCW. So, Sting, thank you very much for everything you've done for this business, and I will be cheering for you, hoping that you win Sunday night as you and Darby successfully defend those AEW Tag Team Championships. Well, that's all the time that we have for this week's episode of 5-Star Takes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week with hopefully a couple new segments and a few new twists and turns for the show. Thanks for watching, everyone. Be sure to check us out on YouTube at www.youtube.com/@SHOOTINGSHT. Find us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/groups/SHOOTINSHT. Check us out on TikTok at SHOOTINSHIT. And you can buy your official Shootin' Shit shirt at www.prowrestlingtees.com/SHOOTINSHT. And thanks for watching.